Eddie, we'll move on because I wanted to talk to you about this book. You're the co-author of Own Our Own Oil. Now, it's long been sort of said quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, by people that, you know, we have so much under us, if you like, in terms of natural resources like oil and gas, but yet we're not making enough money about it. Your book sets out to examine that theory.
Yeah, well, the book is a compilation of essays from about 17 different writers, and it comes at the whole issue of Ireland's offshore hydrocarbon endowment, and whatever the scale of it is yet, we don't know. Official estimates are that there's somewhere approaching $750 billion to €1 trillion worth of oil and gas out in Irish territory.
$1 trillion.
And if you look at the map of Ireland, the traditional map of Ireland, you're looking at the wrong thing. The actual map of Ireland, the territorial map of Ireland, extends almost halfway across the Atlantic. So the national territory is about 7 to 8 times bigger than the land territory.
You're talking about the 200-mile limit.
Yeah, and further. Yeah. So we are now technically a hydrocarbon frontier. Now, there has been very little exploration activity in the frontier because there hasn't, in my opinion, been a great need for it. But we're now seeing the global oil and gas resources under pressure in many traditional areas. Fracking has come in, you know, these horizontal drilling techniques and so on, to suck out the oil in particular from former fields and so on, and that is helping create a current glut, particularly in the gas market. But when you stand back and take a helicopter view of it, you know, the world is reaching resource limits in hydrocarbons and in other natural resources. And any country that has not yet had its hydrocarbons exploited obviously is potentially sitting on a very important asset, not just in terms of its economy, but in Irish terms, in terms of our whole relationship with the EU.
So we're sitting effectively on a huge pot of money if we use it right. But
well,
can we afford to get it out?
Yeah, it's not that straightforward. Well, what we need to do a number of things. Well, just so that people understand, at the moment we get nothing, not a sausage. What we do legally is we're handing over the actual oil and gas itself to private companies with very little oversight, and hoping that at some stage in the future we can get some tax from the revenues generated. But the simple statement, the fact is that if there is an oil strike, for example, off the coast of Ireland, the Irish consumers will have to buy that oil back at international prices from international markets.
Now, why does that happen?
Because that's in the licence agreement that was implemented in 1987 by Minister Ray Burke when he dismantled the previous licensing regime, which was put in place by Justin Keating, and which insisted that 50% of all oil and gas that would come out of the ground would be shared with the Irish people. That was removed by Burke.
In terms of territory, though, I mean, if something is found, let's just say inside the 200-mile barrier, if something serious is found, who actually owns that, Eddie?
It is the private exploration companies, not us.
Right. Well, it could be us, could it?
No, it couldn't. No, under the license agreement, we're giving it away. And if we were to try and unpick those license agreements, we would be challenged under Article 10 of our Constitution on property rights. I mean, we're just giving it away. Like, for example, if you look at Corrib, where we know there's been a fine gas, the estimated revenues out of Corrib, the last estimate I read about was about 9 billion euros in potential gas to come out of the Corrib field. I estimate that the amount of money the Irish state will generate from that will be somewhere between nothing and 7% of total revenues. And that compares to nation-states globally who earn somewhere between 60 and 80%, leaving the oil and gas companies with very, very substantial profits.
So first of all, why did Ray Burke do that? And secondly, is there any way to fix it?
Ray Burke went to meetings unaccompanied by his senior civil servants. And is there a way to fix it? Well, there may not be. At the moment, 6% of our offshore oil and gas areas, the sweet spots, are already subject to licences and options on licences that postdated Burke's involvement. And unfortunately, we may not be able to do anything about that. Well, we could unilaterally do something about it and away challenge on it in international courts, of course, but you know, that's not seen to be a good citizen in the EU. But we need to do a number of things. The first thing we need to do is we need to undertake a full strategic review of Irish policy across everything, not just in terms of pricing and production sharing, but the insane planning system to de-risk it for private companies as well. We need to set targets like controlling distribution, and we need to establish a national oil exploration company that can PPP, in other words, can get involved with private industry, where we're coming with the actual potential hydrocarbon assets, and they come with the capital.
So we'd be the partners in the operation.
Yes, but we don't necessarily have to put up much money at all. They come with the money and the know-how, and the part of the license agreement is they would transfer the expertise to us. This is exactly what the Norwegians did in 1972, and that's why one of the things we need to do as well is to adopt the principles that the Norwegians adopted in 1972 when they went at their regime, which was doing what we are now doing, and they now have in a situation many years later where there's been a slow rate of extraction, there's been a qualitative improvement to the lifestyle of Norwegian citizens, which was a very poor fishing country at the time, and they have a sovereign wealth fund which is about 2.5 times the size of our national debt. So for every 100,000 euros we as taxpayers are in the hole as a consequence of the collapse in 2008, the Norwegian citizen individually has 100,000 euros of assets in their sovereign wealth fund each.
Because of the way the oil is managed?
Yes.
You're depressing me, Eddie.
Well, I mean, that's what they've done. I mean, they've had the best success at it, and it's not just because of the scale of oil that was found off Norway and gas. By the way, they were told there was nothing there as well. They were told the same yarn, and it's not just because of the scale or the quality, but because of the quality, really, of the governance, the management, the principles that they put in place. We have none of that.
Was there ever a caller who just wants to know, was oil found off Ardmore? Has that happened?
Don't know. Look, there is a line of thinking that which is the national policy, which is we'll do something when there's been an oil find, and that we have to give it away to get it back. And I mean, that's a kind of a peasant mentality. We have a chapter in our book on the cultural attitude, the servitude and attitude of the Irish towards their own natural resources. And we've had that traditional attitude. And now these writers are saying, well, this has to change, and a lot of people believe it has to change as well. But unfortunately, the neutral opinion is, well, sure, listen, sure, what else can we do? What else do we deserve? Should we just give it away? And sure, maybe at some stage we'll get a bit of tax back at some stage in the future. Shouldn't we be glad that they're drilling holes in off Ireland and throwing in €100 million hole?
What you seem to be saying, Eddie, is there's no need for us to ever have been broke.
Well, what I'm saying is that if Ireland does at some stage in the future become the next hydrocarbon frontier in Northern Europe, on the basis of the rock formation that runs across the shoulder of the North Atlantic to Newfoundland, then we're going to look back at this period in Irish policy making and strategy as being another episode of callousness, lack of ambition, and lack of savvy by Irish policymakers. And that's what we've got at the moment. And this book challenges it on every front, not just in terms of the giveaway pricing, but in terms of the whole strategy, the planning system. We have a chapter on taxation. We have a chapter on geology. There's a chapter on the industry and so on. And so there's a lot of things we can do. We can also tighten up the existing tax regime, even on the existing licenses. But again, it requires political will. But it's not there. I mean, in the most recent engagement on this matter, there was a primetime debate a couple of weeks ago with Minister Pat Rabbitte, and it's quite clear that the minister came to that debate with a closed mind and just relied on rehearsed one-liners to try and get through it, and then just lost the rag when that wasn't working. And this is far too serious, really, to be left in the hands of people who don't grasp it, which is one of the reasons why we're suggesting that a new planning model should come under.
But if it's all under there, Eddie, why hasn't it been found?
Well, because there hasn't been a requirement. There has been some drilling, but the level of or the density of drilling offshore Ireland has been very, very low in comparison to the UK and Norway because of the propensity to be able to hit the jackpot cheaper elsewhere. But to grasp why there has been very little drilling in the Irish area, you have to understand the technology and the differences between technology in the 70s and 80s and technology today for drilling in pretty difficult positions like the Arctic and the Antarctic and so on. And you also have to understand the whole global supply and demand and resource depletion story. And it is simply logic, deduction, that Ireland will become a new frontier location.
Well, let's hope that somebody can rethink it and get it right. Eddie, the book is called Own Our Own Oil. And
well, it's Own Our Oil, and we have an organisation as well. If you Google it, you'll get it at ooo.ie. And we're now in the ground war, I suppose. We're now in the process of getting people that have read the book to get our PowerPoints and slides and go and start giving talks in schools, universities, and organisations, just to tell people to have this type of exchange and to give people the information so that at least public information can be informed, public opinion can be informed, and I hope changed. And ultimately, the establishment policy in Ireland will change, given its propensity to lead from behind.
Interesting conversation. Thanks ever so much, Eddie Hobbs.
Thank you.
Thank you.